Welcome to self-discoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of For the Love of Music right here on self-discoverywisdom.com. Today, I have the great guys of George Whitty and Ellis Hall. What they say in the world. This is their new music. They have come together to create some beautiful songs. And what in Die Living. A great song. We're going to be sharing a snippet of it, but you can go to their site and purchase it there. But it's really some wonderful lyrics in there. The really ones, not just the beat, not just the groove, but the words are very, very profound. So how did these guys come together? Each one of them have had their own beautiful journey in music, and they've come together and decided to turn their long-time mutual admiration into official partnership. They committed full throttle to the recording of their expository contemporary twist of classic R&B and came up with a clever brand idea. Rather than simply calling themselves Whitty Hall and Hall or the autistic team to create what and add in a handful of explanation points to what was born as the full CD shaped up its probing commentary on the ups and downs of living today, and the title in the world suggested itself the accomplishment to the band's name. Then longtime fans of two keyboard powerhouses and newcomers to the Whitty Hall experience check out these electric 10 tracks. Their initial response were truly rousing. What in the world? At first glance, there is a little inside joke here, but it also speaks to Ellis and his observation of the worlds we live in, pooling and sharing various life experiences together. Their pitch-perfect creative mission statement of what puts the fun in funk. Grammy winner Whitney and long-beloved ambassador of soul and former Power of Tower vocalist Hall had their name and title down. Next was the picking of the perfect lead single. Well, that lead single is what we're going to be hearing a snippet of today. Musicians and music, for me, is guilty pleasure. We know that music is a soul alluring. We know that it's healing, and we know that it's the poetry and the statement, not only of the times. You can listen to songs to 20, 40, 50 years ago, and they've still got a statement to say. But I think it's a beautiful way of expressing things that we really want to say that aren't heard in just spoken words, but in the vocal, musical word, it's something that I think it ignites, not just thought, but it hits the heart, it hits the soul before it hits the mind. Welcome to the show, George and Ellis.
Hey,
Pleasure to be here.
Good to have you here. And my apologies, folks. Yes, I have a cold again, so forgive the hoarse voice here today. Okay, I'm going to go to each one of you individually before you teamed up. George, what has your journey been like in music? Because you've been at it a long time, uh, I'm a winner, so obviously this is something that you've dedicated your life to, but it's not an easy road to ride, is it?
No, there's a great quote from a jazz musician. I think it was Jackie McLean, brilliant saxophonist. And he said, only do this if you have to, which is kind of an interesting take on it. And I think
Mhm.
Ellis might agree with me. We both sort of had to.
amen.
It was a super unlikely choice for me. I grew up in a little town in Oregon, on the coast of Oregon, beautiful little place called Coos Bay, Oregon. But it's not the kind of place that you would expect a jazz musician or a soul R&B musician to come from. But the music found me,
Mhm.
and I think a lot of the same music that found me found Ellis too. At one point, I managed to get a hold of Songs in the Key of Life, the brilliant Stevie Wonder record, and I got some Herbie Hancock and a bunch of Chick Corea, George Duke, Weather Report, and a lot of older jazz too. I was really into Bud Powell, the great pianist, Art Tatum, Charlie Parker, Clifford Brown, people like that. And I kind of decided to make a run at it, and my parents, to their credit, got behind me. And, off to Boston I went to study at the Berklee School of Music. And from there I moved to New York. And you could keep networking in New York and you meet people. I did a year on the road with Matt Guitar Murphy, got lucky and got to produce a couple tracks for Shaka Khan in the late 80s. Spent most of the 90s working with a really great electric jazz band called the Brecker Brothers, David Sanborn, Carlos Santana, and Dave
Mm.
Matthews.
Hmm.
Just kind of a lucky call from a friend of mine, Rodney Holmes, who was the drummer on that date. And, as long as, in the words of the great percussionist Don Elias, you give good bus, people keep passing your name around. You have to
Hmm.
play well, but also be a good hang. And that, it kind of eventually leads us to today. I will add that I used to see Tower of Power every time they came through New York. They would play at this club called The Bottom Line. And one day I went in there and there's this guy sitting at the keyboards with a pair of shades on, and he just blew me away. And of course, I'm talking about Wallace Schmengi.
That's it. Hey!
That's just Ellis. No, it was Ellis. And I have never heard the band sounding like that.
Hmm.
And that was my first exposure to Ellis. We kind of drilled down and figured out that must have been in about 1988.
Wow.
And then we've been circling each other warily
Hmm.
for the last, what would that be, 30 years or something like that.
35,
Finally
35,
managed to
yeah.
connect and make
Long
this
time.
record.
Yeah. Um, m- um, I love Dave Brubeck. My cousin-in-law, I suppose it is Darius Brubeck, his son who carried on with the jazz. And
Sure.
it's that kind of guttural jazz if you think about it in many, many ways. But you kind of add an R&B to the jazz. I said it's not just music that makes you stretch, it's an elongation. It's a slow stretch. It's where everything opens up and everything is felt, from the tips of your fingers to the bottom of your toes. And when you've got that kind of music where you just feel it running through you, the connection to absolutely everything. I mean, scientists have actually proven that frequency coming from music recalibrates us. It has an amazing amount of healing, has an enormous amount of things on our brain waves. So the music that we listen to is great, but how about the music that we feel? Because I think when you feel it, you're listening to feel it. And when you feel it, then you know you've really got it. So you both inspired each other through the feeling of it first. Right, Ellis?
Amen. With all these exclamation points.
So what got you into music, Ellis?
Well, now, when I was born in Georgia, my mom swears I came out of the womb dancing and singing. I said, ow, that must have hurt.
It might have made it an easier labor, who knows?
Yeah. What happened a year into my birthday, realized my eyes are brown, but they had clouded over and turned blue. And no, I wasn't Crystal Gale, so my brown eyes turned blue. But no. But what they said, they took me up to a Perkins School for the Blind in Watertown, Massachusetts. And, they were teaching me piano, and I'd be playing silly things like this. And every time before I discovered music, I'd be doing, my teacher would say, Ellis Hall. So I'd go back to my classical. But what would happen at 14, my elder brother, snuck me into a club. I had no business being there. And I had some vision, and with my watering eyes, I saw the looks on the faces of the musicians, not the people listening, but the musicians, and they were whipping the audience into a frenzy. And from that moment, that was my true aha slash epiphany moment. And I put a drum set together. I made a wash tub bass because I didn't have a real one. And I drove my parents absolutely crazy. My mom's, one of her favorite phrases was, son, I know you got to practice, but you have to make all that fuss. And then she came to see me at a club with my pops. And they said, Lord of mercy, all that fuss was worth it. Because I made a lot of noises. I'm sure his brother George did. You could play on. And that's what it is, the hunger, and always, even 7 sets a night, 7 nights a week, playing it like you mean it from the very bottom of your
Mhm.
soul. And
Compulsion.
I
Hmm.
have been in the business over 57 years, and to this day, I still feel like I'm just getting started. And when
Hmm.
brother George and I, we, as he said earlier, skated around each other. Not ice skating; we could fall and hurt ourselves. So just skirting around, literally. The issue until all of a sudden our buddy Alex said, he told me in 2012, Alex said, you got to hook up with George. And I said, okay. So I got his number, but we ended up hooking up on this marvelous tune. And I hope you get to hear it. It's called Hug Me, lifting up the Ukrainian spirit in all of us.
Hmm.
I'm telling you, Miss Sarah, that's, music, whether it's a ballad or it's a up tempo that will shake your esophagus and make you like it. That's what music does.
It does. It
Mm-hmm.
does. I mean, it's that universal language, isn't it? I mean, I always marvel when I hear people singing English and you go up to speak to them and they can't speak it. They don't understand it, but they can sing it very well, because
Well,
I mean, everything about life is rhythm, right? It's getting into the rhythm.
I've done some sessions in Swahili and stuff, and I barely speak English, but I had to learn all these different languages. But the feeling was always there.
Mm,
I call the loving heart swell.
mm.
I mean, that's the only way to describe it. You feel it from the inside out, and if you hold it inside, you could hurt yourself.
Yeah, yes, yes. I say that every single person is born with a gift. And our self-discovery is what is that gift? How do we use it? I'm always drawing the analogy is what instrument are we? Once we learn what that instrument is and how to play it, we could be a great soloist. However, when we come together as an orchestra, right, each one of us in our own respect for the other musicians, our own gift, and we come together harmoniously, we transcend. So we can have a wonderful person playing a solo, but when they come together with someone else, where those two hearts meet vibrationally, then we are seeing an expansion that just transcends completely. So this is what's happened with you two, right?
And I want to interrupt you because George, and I meant to say this a while ago, when he first sent me the track of Die Living, I noticed in the background there's some. So George was doing his version of the beatbox. How funky is that? Somebody, let me just intertwine like a giant rope and do what we do. And it's so funny because that's what the actual phrase of camaraderie.
Mm,
It's that whole thing. How much synergy can you make, and how good can you make it feel?
yeah.
How?
On the topic of what happens when we all come together, to
Hmm.
me, my favorite musical experiences have been ones with musicians from some other continent.
Mm,
On the three of the tunes that are coming out on the record, we use this great bassist named Armand Sabaleko. He's the bassist from Paul Simon's band, those big tours for Rhythm of the Saints and Graceland and so forth. Just an incredible
yeah.
musician from Cameroon. And, I play in Armand's band, and we have a guitarist from Japan, Toshi Yanagi, and Armand, and me, and usually an American drummer. And it's interesting because we'll play Armand's music, and we all hear the beat in a different
Hmm.
place.
Hmm.
And I talked to Armand about that. Sometimes he comes over and he goes, "Really? That's where you think one is?" But he says that over all these years, he's learned to just roll with it, that it's okay if if that's how people are doing it, you know.
They're adding their expression, right?
Yeah, and everybody brings some
Mm.
completely fresh slant on the music when you do gigs like
Yes.
that. And it brings something so different. And if you're any kind of good jazz or R&B musician, you can play with anything. And
Hmm.
these new rhythms or new ideas for harmony or just what have you, it's always just such a treat. And it's an overused phrase, the universal language. But man, it's amazing to just sit down with people that you've never met who are from somewhere completely different and, could be Russia, it could be, China, it could be
Hmm.
Iceland, who knows where they're from, and just instantly make music.
Yeah. It's all about that beat. It's all about that rhythm. It's all about the heart connection. I'm introducing my grandsons who are 3 and 16 months to the music that Nana likes. And my little 16-month-old has Down syndrome, but this little boy has got rhythm. And I introduced him to Come Together the other day. He went bananas. And he
Hmm.
loves funky music. Anything kind of a jazzy, bluesy, funky, this little boy is going nuts, right? And he has this music theory where they're playing kind of nursery rhymes, and you go, "Ugh." Put on some funky music, and he's grooving
Right.
like crazy.
Good for
And
him.
and it's just wonderful to see because music, he has some little challenges as a Down syndrome child. But when it comes to music, it is his full expression completely. And he's grooving away and just like comes alive. And that's the beauty of music, isn't it? It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you've got, color, black, white, obstacles, challenges, it doesn't matter. Music is going to speak to us where we need it. And when you actually connect with a musician as a musician, where you're melding those beautiful vibrations together, then I'm sure it is a wonderful discovery. You know your music, you know his music, but what music can we make together? I mean, what a wonderful journey to go on.
I want to tell you, it's wonderful to see that you're lovingly teaching him how to celebrate his differently able.
Oh gosh. And now I'm so glad you said differently able. That is a word I use. Not a
Yeah. He's
disability,
got
just
to stay
differently able. Yes,
differently able. And he will celebrate that and show folks along the way how to celebrate it. And
exactly. Here to teach
so,
us.
having had vision and lost it, when I tell folks I see music in color, I
Yeah,
hear it in color. And I guess they call it synesthesia, but whatever it is, I'm going to hear it and hopefully make you love it from the inside out. And as Brother George does. So
it
Lord,
creates a vision, doesn't it? It does
yeah,
create a vision. Hmm.
I'll be really curious to see. He's pretty young to put his hands on like some kind of a little keyboard or something.
Yeah, yeah,
But that it's such an interesting thing. I have two kids also, and watching them, just start to pound away on
yeah.
a toy piano or
He's
something like
doing that.
that.
He's doing that.
Yeah, synapses
Absolutely.
start to connect
Yeah.
and fire,
Yes.
and bridges get built in your brain and so forth. And both my kids are super avid musicians, and all I did for them was just let them do their groove.
yeah,
Yes. Let them find their groove,
Yeah,
right?
we got them piano lessons with an excellent piano teacher named Bob Schultz up on the mountain where we live. But if you just don't get in the way of the
Yeah.
joy of it,
Yeah. And
it's
it's funny,
amazing
but
how much time they'll devote to it.
yeah.
my little 3-year-old found the song and we kind of, where did he get it? And he heard it on Google because he goes, "Hey, Google," and asks for a song. He's become obsessed with Country Rose
That's a
and
great.
he sings
Country
that.
Roads, the John Denver
Yes,
song. Oh, good
absolutely.
for him. That
And he
John Denver
sings it,
was such a great writer.
but he just, all of the words he knows
Uh-huh.
and he is just immersed in it. I mean, go, "But how did you learn this at daycare?" Didn't know. He heard it on Google and it hit him. And then he heard it again and again to learn those lyrics. And that's the thing about not every song is going to hit somebody, right? You might just not be in the right frame of mind for that particular music at that moment, but then you hear something else, and it just opens you up completely, and down you go, that beautiful rabbit hole.
Hey, this era, it's gonna blow your mind when he walks out. So he'll start playing that song and say, "How did you learn that?"
And that's the beauty of it is I totally agree with you, George, of expose them to it. Give them the fundamentals, whether it's guitar or piano. It's the basics of understanding, like your first steps. We don't teach them how to run, we teach them how to walk. The running is something, the skipping and the jumping and the dancing is something they're going to do when they feel compelled to do it. So give them the fundamentals and then give them the exposure. My kids love the Beatles. They love, you know, Sting, they love. I used to have us all in the living room singing We Are the Champions. And if I really wanted to piss them off, I started singing opera. Anything to shut me up, they would do it, right? So music was really something around our house completely. And the music is so huge to them today. They don't play it, but they let the music guide them in life and express sometimes the way they're feeling when they can't express it.
Those records seem to be a bit of a common language too. My
Mm,
boys found the Beatles.
mm,
My son Ryan can play every tune on Sergeant Pepper on the
hmm
piano. They love the Beatles. They love the Who. They listen to a lot of classic rock. And, again, I mean, we used to listen to AC/DC in the
mm.
car. We used to listen to Metallica, Enter Sandman. I was always getting us to listen to Donny Hathaway and Chaka Khan, stuff like that. But there's definitely records that a new generation with no idea even,
Mm, hmm
that this is such great music. Ray Charles, we used to listen to.
Yeah.
Uh, they know it when they hear it.
When they feel it again. It's back to that
Yeah,
feel.
and it's funny
Yeah.
how the common thread is like this certain clutch of records and bands and musicians.
Mm. Of course, I'm a 70s chick, right? So, brought up with Blood, Sweat and Tears, Earth, Wind and Fire, Red. I love the song God Bless the Child that they sing. I also used to be mobile DJ and go and play at the parties. I was also South Africa's first go-go
Mhm.
dancer way back in 1970. So music for me was just being able to conduct and, DJ through the night and kind of set the mood like a beautiful rhythm. Okay, I'm going to slow you down a bit now. Oh, it's time to wake everybody up and bring people up again. And it was just so wonderful to see kind of the momentum through the evening of how music where it could just make everybody come to the floor and dance and forget any differences, forget anything else other than the joy of the moment. And it was just wonderful to see.
Love that.
I mean, because music is obviously hugely important to me, as I said, this guilty pleasure. And I've had the honor of interviewing many a musician that goes back, like yourself, 57 years, 60 years. You know, Joe Coleman from the Planters, and gosh, I call him the saxophonist. I've gone blank on the moment, but a lot of musicians that have been in the business for a long time. And the problem is being a musician is that you put all your heart and soul and love into a project, and then there's always a gap before the next project, right? And so, how do you maintain a life between that? Because I think a lot of people would love to be the artist, love to be the musician, and the parents are all saying, "Go and get a real job," right? You've got to pay the rent. But what we're doing is we're costing their soul on that because if they're compelled to do music, they must do music. But how does a youngster listening to this today find a way to sustain themselves between the great gigs? George, I hit you first.
Well, my son Chris is just entered USC in their music production department. And my son Ryan is a senior at Cal and a very avid and really good pianist. So Chris is looking to make a living in the music world, and I do a lot of clinics and and workshops and stuff. Ellis just did one, what, last week, right?
Yes. Yes, sir.
And to me, the key, it's changing so fast now, but the key is to do a lot of different things really well. So I can produce tracks. I've done a lot of orchestral arranging for Herbie Hancock, for a Puerto Rican rapper named Residente. I mix records. I play live. You know, I go on tour. People call me to play on tracks and stuff like that. And I always tell people I don't think any one of the things I do would make my mortgage happen and so forth. But by
Hmm.
being pretty damn good at six different things,
Yes.
yeah, I stay busy. And as a young musician, I mean, I don't see how you can't be interested, for example, if you're a young musician today, in the process of mixing a record. You know,
Hmm.
to me, it just flowed naturally that I wanted to get an 8-track reel-to-reel tape recorder and start trying to make records in my bedroom. And this was in 1987.
Hmm.
And I think Ellis has always been the same way. You know, man, when we got the ability to do this without spending a couple $1,000 a day in a studio, it's just seems natural to
Yeah.
me. So, and now, you know, you mentioned that you were having a conversation about AI with,
Hmm.
I think it was your kids, maybe.
Yes, my boys. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to change everything.
Hmm.
And, you know, so the world that my son Chris is going to bloom into as a music producer is so different from the
Yes.
one that I grew up in. Because the one I grew up in, worst case, you know, when I was in New York, you could be in a wedding band and you would throw your saxophone and your toupee in the trunk of a car between weekends, but you'd go out on the weekend and make $750 doing 3 weddings.
Hmm.
And now I don't think that world exists so much anymore. So it'll be different challenges. It's always been different
Yeah.
challenges, you know, but diversity for me is the key.
Mm. Yeah.
I
You
mean,
know,
Ellis, one minute he's making a record with me, and then the next minute he's a raisin.
Hey,
Did you
what
know about that?
no.
Do you remember the great
Yes.
California raisins
Yes.
ad?
Yes. Yes.
That's the raisin.
Oh, wow. You got
Ellis was
gobbled
the
up. You
lead
really
raisin
did.
on Heard It Through the Grapevine.
I love that. Love that. And you know, that's interesting because there was somebody else that the Geico was taking on the song Whoops. Do, 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 do. They were a one-hit wonder. And he said that one-hit wonder set him up for life and what he learned from of that set him up in life completely. He wasn't meant to be a
Sure.
musician, but it set him up. But one thing Joe Coleman said to me, and I want to ask you this, Ellis. I said to him at one time, because he's been around the same time period as you, you're like mid-60s, he started with the Planters. Was there any technology or anything along the line that, stopped you from performing that became the big hiccup? And he said disco, and that people would hire a DJ, right, to come and play a gig for 200 and don't want to pay the band because it costs a lot more. And he actually went over to Europe for that decade and
Right.
introduced himself to music over there. What about you, Ellis? Did you run into anything like that?
it's interesting you would ask that because I had a group in the 70s called the Ellis Hall Group. And instead of doing the quote unquote disco route, because we played in all those clubs that had the, but they would always, every time we came, they would stop the DJ from playing and have us do the live situation. Now we knew
Hmm.
how to play some of those tunes, but we would always do not an arrangement, but a derangement of any song that we heard. So we changed it, kept the essence, so you knew
Hmm.
kind of what it was, but that's what the challenge was. I
Hmm.
love that. And earlier we were talking about recorders and stuff. George, before I got my hands on one of those, I think it was a Tiag or it was a cassette.
That's what we had, the Tascam Porta Studio.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had that, but before that, I used to have two cassette recorders, and this is late '60s, early '70s, and I go back and forth, and
Right, add a track each time.
the hits at the end. can you make it through the his?
Yeah, that's right.
But
You
my
know,
my bottom line is, yeah, we knew all the different genres that were coming through.
right,
If you can make it through YMCA and survive, you're good.
right, right.
We do what we do and play it like we mean it. And again, in those clubs, 7 sets a night, 7 nights a week.
Mm,
Each time, how can you make it different so you don't drive yourself crazy? Because they say
eh,
musicians are crazy anyway. I'm not
yes.
driving.
You know, one of the music, the saxophonist I was talking about, Gerald Albright, who's
I
also
love
been,
it.
yeah, and he's saying that he was on American Idol for 6 years.
Yes.
And that's a tough gig
Yep.
because you've got amateurs, and it's a short time period for each song to be learned and put up there. But he said it's like he still went off and did his gravy or the cream on top, and that was his bread and butter. So
Right.
there's always bread and butter that has to be, buttered to keep the roof over their head. And I think, that sets apart the longevity musician as opposed to the, kind of short-term musicians where they kind of drink their own Kool-Aid and I'm so self-important and everybody wants me. But there's so much competition out there. You really want the sustainability. How versatile are you?
Yeah.
Right? How flexible are you? How adaptable and adoptable are you? Because really, you are looking at making music long term and,
And
don't
Gerald
get
is a
caught in.
great example because he has a great solo career going.
Hmm.
But put that ballast in the boat. If you got a TV show going,
Yes,
I mean, look at the musicians that they've had on the Tonight Show over the years.
yes.
They had Branford Marsalis, they had Smitty Smith playing drums on that show and so forth. And yeah,
Yeah, I always take my hat off to, the people on The Voice. That band is absolutely exceptional.
hmm,
Just incredible. And they have to know all genres.
right,
This not be their groove, but they have to know the whole genre there and play it like they mean it, right?
hmm.
So, and I'm sure that can be a challenge at times. You may be a rock and rollers and country ain't your thing, but you've got to play a country song like you mean it. So, have either of you ever been asked to play something outside of the genre that you really like to play in? Or maybe, dabbled in it and then found out you like it?
Well,
George?
I'll tell you what, I early on in New York City, to me, if you're a great jazz player, you can probably play anything. I mean, I
It's the
actually am a
fundamental.
big
Yeah.
country music fan. I'm a weeper and I like the weeper ballads.
Yeah.
But early on in New York City, I got called to do an audition for Judy Collins. I was playing with this guitar
Mm.
player there, and he had been Judy's guitarist for years. And that was going to be a very demanding gig. And so, I learned her music and I went up to her apartment and I played for her. And I remember one thing that happened right away was she said, "You can conduct an orchestra, right?" And I said, "Oh, of course I can conduct an orchestra." And I didn't have any idea about conducting an orchestra, but I wasn't going to, I figured, I'll buy a book. I'll spend a week on it. How hard can it be?
Yeah.
But man, I played for this lady, and Judy is a serious classical pianist. She went to
Mm.
Juilliard. She was that long before she was the Judy Collins we know. And I could not please her with my piano playing. She wanted it more classical. And I
Mm.
was like, oh, wow. Okay, well, and I dug in there and tried to make it more dramatic and more legato. And I tried all kinds of different things. And I couldn't meet her specification. So weirdly enough,
George, you
yeah,
can do
I guarantee, we were doing both sides now, Judy's
yes.
version of that, and so forth. And, she would sit down and play it the way she wanted it. And I'd go, okay. And I would sit down, and to me, I was playing it just the way she wanted it. But,
Not
I'm
to
not
her
a
ear.
Juilliard person. I did
Right.
study classical piano for 8 years. But I thought it was funny that of all the things to get dusted on,
Yes.
yeah, that was a weird one to like not meet the spec on, but I didn't meet the spec. So, you know,
But I mean, if that's her case, then she should have gone for somebody who was classically trained.
Well, but
right?
she needed somebody that had some pop sensibility to him also. And the guy who recommended me kind of knew me as a person who could play anything, but she was really picky about it.
Mm-hmm. Can't
There was
meet
also
everybody's
a date that I
expectations.
did just quick with the Carlos Santana date.
Uh-huh.
We
Oh,
we
Santana.
I showed up. He and Dave Matthews had like the bare bones of a song, and there weren't even any words yet, and Dave was still working on the melody. And we went out and did this piece. Really great, just great band, a thrill for me, of course, to play with both those guys and
Yeah.
his band in general too. And at the end, somebody gets this idea that we should do what's called a montuno feel at the end, which is that kind of energetic Latin feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm no specialist at that, but I'm a jazz guy and I kind of know what it's supposed to sound like. It's actually such a specific art form. The guys who do it have this great push and pull with the rhythm that takes a lifetime to master. But so we did it. And everyone was thrilled and we were done. And I had to open my big mouth in the studio and say, I think I could do one better. So I
Whoa.
went out there and tried to do one better, but now I come back into the booth and I'm like, there, I think we have it. But now everyone in the booth is going, if you went like ding 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 ding
Yeah.
ding ding
Oh
ding
no!
ding 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 ding, like they're singing me things, and Carlos's comment was, George, music is like a flower. You must encourage it to grow and spread. And so I went out and tried to do one that was more like a flower that
Mm.
integrated all these things that people were singing me. And I come back in, and now they have other ideas. And
Uh,
Carlos says, George, music is like a woman. She must be encouraged to reach her full potential slowly, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. And I went out and tried another one that was more like a woman. But it took 2 hours. And I think we should have just stuck with the very first thing I
yeah.
played.
I mean, that's for something I'm always saying in life is that instinctualism. When it's right, it's right. Don't mess with right. Right. And
Yeah,
we
just
get in
keep
our
your
head.
mouth shut. If
Yeah,
everybody's
exactly.
happy,
Yeah, we get stuck in our head. Well, maybe I should do that. No, you played from the heart. You
and
played from
most
the soul.
musicians are a
Leave it
little
alone.
neurotic.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like James Taylor. He will do 3 takes.
Mm.
That's all you got. If
And if
you
you
because
can't get it in that time period, you're not going to get it.
if you haven't got it in those three, you ain't got it.
Yeah.
That's it. I've seen folks, a lot of friends of mine who've done like 80 takes and beyond. But after a while, it's a power of no return. You've
I
already
think
done
it kind of becomes sterile a bit, doesn't it? You kind of
well,
lose the essence of it.
after a while you're tired and want,
Yeah.
some of my friends in Steely Dan went through the same thing. It's like, wait a
They
minute.
were famous for it.
Oh my God, famous for it ain't the word. My dear friend Rob Mounsey said they drove him absolutely crazy. He got stuff what they needed, but that's 150 takes later.
Oh my
Right.
God.
And then a
You
year
know,
later, they come
the
back and
old Bill Evans thing too. Bill would do like 15 takes of every tune,
oh,
but they almost always kept the first one.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
Sometimes the second one, but he had to completely exhaust it
yeah.
so that he was satisfied that they had done their absolute best.
Wow.
Yeah.
So being in the studio and recording when you have a chance to re-record, or kind of just getting out there in the audience. My mum was a stage actress, and she said that she performed differently every night according to the audience. The vibe in the audience kind of changed the way she may present herself, or just twitch it a little way or that way. It's the same with a musician, isn't it? When you get out there in front of the audience, you're feeling what they need, or you're working off them, or you're providing what they need. And so, kind of being live as opposed to being in the studio and recording.
Very,
Is there such a difference? Yeah, Ellis?
very different. And what's interesting for me, I can, and I'd say not even have to close my eyes, but I can imagine when I'm before an audience or when I'm not before an audience in a studio, I'm still feeling and hearing that audience in my head. Oh yeah,
Mm,
you touch that one. Let's see where we can go. How high can you go? How high do you dare go?
mm.
Are you feeling like Icarus today?
I remember experience I had in Rome where this friend took me late at night to this club. It was almost kind of knock knock, so sent me. And we just sat and had a drink and I said, "What's happening?" And he said, "Just wait." One by one, musicians from other gigs came in, didn't say a word, went up and got their drink, sat down at this circle of instruments, pick up an instrument and start playing. Then another guy and another person would come in and they all start playing. And the next thing you know, they're all in sync together. They've all worked with different bands, different groups. They were working, um, performers. It was heaven because they
Oh,
were so in the moment. It was something not to be repeated, not to be recorded. It was an expression of the now. And it was an experience I will never, ever forget. And I think that is, I remember uh, sorry, I can't remember his
oh,
name,
that,
Williams.
that that phrase you said, expression of the now. I gotta
Mm,
use that as the title.
what's the name? Robert Williams. He used to play with the Doors. And he was saying that one day he was kind of in the studio and Brian started playing. And he said it was transformative. And he said afterwards to Brian, "We've got to record this, Brian. This is absolutely fantastic." Because record what? He had expressed, it was done. And of course, now on our phones, we can press record or get out the camera and
Right.
capture the moment. But for him, he was playing for himself, not an
Yeah.
audience. Right? So, have there ever been ones that you played for yourself and then afterwards, no, this isn't for anyone else, it's just for me? George?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've played for some audiences that were so in tune. I remember doing a gig in Novosibirsk in Russia one time with Randy Brecker's band. And it was the most in tune, I think, most musically
Whoa, sorry.
tuned in audience I've ever played for because their take on the music aligned with mine perfectly. If I
Mm.
thought somebody was just out there killing it, they freaked out, they gave a standing ovation. If someone was kind of average, it was a golf clap. If for a minute it wasn't that great, they sat on their hands. Um,
Mm.
and I loved it.
Mm.
I've done a lot of other things too. If you play with Randy Crawford, who's a great singer, did a tour of Germany with her, and watching her work the audience, I mean, she would actually, Randy was a bit of a kind of gruff old bird some nights on these gigs, but people knew that they could call out a tune, and Randy, if she was in the mood for it, she would sing it. So
Hmm.
people would call out Aretha Franklin tunes and stuff like that, and Randy never wanted the band to play, although we could have played any of them.
Hmm.
She just wanted to do an a cappella version, and she would just go off, and the audience completely ate it up.
Hmm.
And she would come out sometimes and just say something really funny off the top of her head. But it was an interesting way of joining the band and the
Mm.
audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ellis?
Hey, I'll tell you, that's that whole camaraderie thing. You
Mm.
know, sometimes if I don't have an instrument, I'll simply take out my hey after this, more people come to Willie. And all of a sudden people say, "What in the?"
We did that in an airport. Was that in January, Ellis?
Yeah,
Ellis had his guitar with him, but people got a little spontaneous music at
Wow.
Terminal
that's right.
E9 or
Yeah.
whatever it was.
Wow. I mean, that's being in the right place at the right time, isn't
Yeah.
it?
That's what happens. And you let it be and let it go on and have fun because you're having the fun with life. And
That's the point.
it sounds very repetitive, but life is too short. And
Yeah.
why not live in the now? Celebrate every now, which is a present, as we call it.
The gift of the present is in the now, absolutely for sure. So, die living.
Yeah,
I mean, you look at just the words die living. I mean, I'm always saying to people that so many people are the walking dead already.
yeah.
They're just not engaged with life. They're miserable. They don't know how to raise that vibration. And, they're already dead in the heart and the soul. They're just robotic. They're not living. And really, what is the purpose of life is living, having experiences, good or bad. And what do we learn from it? Who do we become from it? But we've got to make sure we live. I have a thing
Which
on fear. There's common sense fear, and then there's that fear that can completely stifle you. I can't do this and I can't do that. And I'm sure Ellis, as a person challenged with eyes, you've had many a time, well, no, you can't do this because you can't see. Well, no, you may not be able to do this, but you can do that, right? And that's the thing. People don't know how to adjust and be versatile. The other problem is that people have lost the sense of wonderment, of
when
exploration.
when George presented that title to me, I said, "Oh yeah." And he said the colors of the words, and he always lets me tweak, twist, and turn. Watch out. And what we finished with, first of all, I'm honored to work with. I call him my brother from another mother, and we have a brilliant time rearranging and deranging, uh, twisting tunes to our satisfaction, and we pray
Mm,
that to the satisfaction of folks who are listening. And Die Living is that example because hearing his bass, as my brother used to call it, not a synthesizer, but he called it a sympathizer. Hey, bro, you want
mm,
to play the synth?
mm,
So when he came up with those things that would rumble your stomach, and everything just kind of flowed, and the rest is history. And I'm glad you're enjoying it. But you wait till you hear some of the other stuff on the record.
mm, mhm. So, George, are you the lyric writer, or is it something that you start something and Ellis then contributes or changes things around? Is it, what
Yeah,
is it
well,
a full
Yeah, it varies
collaboration?
from tune to tune. I mean, that particular one was just, it's just this weird serendipity. I don't even remember what I was doing when that little phrase "die living" occurred to me. So I went down to my studio and started putting some stuff in the computer. And within a couple hours, it kind of sounded like it still does today.
Hmm.
And I had an idea of what the lyric might be about and how we would get to the chorus where it says, "Because I want to die living."
Hmm.
But I'm not a poet in the sense that Ellis is. So I had a lot of the lyrics fleshed out, but when I bounced it off of Ellis, and he's always very gentle with me when he never says like this is really a terrible lyric, but he suggests refinements and replacements.
Hmm.
And I'm a firm believer that if whoever's going to sing it,
yeah.
the words should really resonate right
Yeah.
with them.
Hmm.
So that I sent it to Ellis. He took out some of the stuff that wasn't flowing right, replaced it with his beautiful poetry, and that's a good example of you know yeah, just a tune that just flowed right out on
Hmm.
there. And
Hmm.
there was at no point, and the older we get, I think Ellis would agree with me. When you first start to write songs, you spend 6 weeks on these things. And
Hmm.
at least I did. And they get overthought. And it's like, they've been raked over the coals so many times from so many different angles that all the inspiration is
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
And this one, and a
Overdosed
lot of
it.
the other stuff on the record too. Ellis will tell you the story about a tune that he wrote called "Some Days Were Meant for Rain."
Hmm.
And if it's going to be a good song, it just kind of births itself pretty effortlessly, and that's how "Die Living" was.
And
Hmm.
that's how Just a Prayer is too, brother. Wait till you hear, Sarah. Just
Hmm. I
okay.
can't wait to hear the whole album because like Die Living, it's when you do die, you want to know that you've lived right to the very last moment, right?
Right.
And that's the
There,
thing, it's.
there's a great interview with Willie Nelson on 60 Minutes. It's from 25 years ago, probably. And they asked him, are you ever going to retire? And he says, nope, my intention is to be standing at the side of my grave, and I'm just going to play da 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 da, and then he'll fall into his grave and the casket will
I love
close.
that. I can see that picture completely in my head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we just had a couple great musicians hit 100 years
Uh,
old.
Yeah.
The
uh,
great drummer Roy Haynes is now 100 and still kicking it on the
yeah.
drums. Herbie Hancock is now 84 and playing better than ever.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I
Oh,
think
well, the
Elvis
music,
and I are
the music doesn't die, right? It doesn't die when we die. It doesn't die within us as long as we keep it alive. And for as long as we
right.
can express it, okay, the voice may change a little bit. I mean, look at Tony Bennett. I mean, he was out there performing to a what age, and his voice changed slightly. Didn't have the same strength as 20 years prior. But when you've got, again, heart and soul behind it, if there's a crack in the voice, I think with the writing of the music, the producing of the music, actually, I think with age has that maturity and depth, like a fine wine, like a good brandy that's been, maturing for so long. But with a singer, yes, the voice may change, but you always are feeling the heart. And that's the difference.
Weirdly enough, I think the only person I know where the voice hasn't changed is Ellis Hall.
What you
Right, Ellis? This guy still has 5 octaves. And I mean, have you ever changed the key of any of your tunes in your book, Ellis, to lower it so you can reach it?
No.
No.
You see? I mean,
It's
that's,
really super unusual
yeah, it
though.
is. It is.
And I got to tell you, one of my inspirations is the great little Anthony
Hmm.
in the Imperials. I don't know what he's doing these days, but over the years, he took care of his instruments. And
Mm,
the gentleman who really taught me that was dearest friends with Nat King Cole. His name was
mm,
Clay Douglas. And he taught me, although at 17, we just wanted to get to the meat of the subject. Well, how do I sing? How do I sing that lick? He said, Ellis, slow down. Think about everything that you say. If it's not an instrumental, obviously, think about how, and even if it's an instrumental, how you're going to play that so somebody might hear or feel that situation. And it has served me well. And my piano teacher, he would have me forget my piano lessons and go and grab my bass, my upright bass, and we would play John Coltrane charts or Charlie Parker or any of these cats who just helped to change the scope of music. And if you're thinking about a song from the philosophy of it, listen how Nat King Cole sang.
mm,
You felt.
There you
yeah,
go.
yeah,
And Donny Hathaway, you
mm,
felt. And Aretha, God bless her,
yeah.
all these people. You felt from
They're
the,
not singing it, they're singing it.
yeah, SAAA, and you
Yeah.
sang.
And that's kind of, it was interesting because I do watch The Voice and Bublé was trying to get one particular contestant who was jazzy. And he said to her, look, jazz is the basis of everything. Hip hop, you name it, it's the base of everything, rock and roll, everything.
Yeah,
That jazz is that foundation there that you springboard from.
yeah,
And that's when you tune into the jazz,
yeah.
you can go anywhere. Do you agree with that?
I do agree. And you can hear like he's a very smooth crooner,
Hmm.
but you can hear that he can, what some would call coloratura. He would do these licks.
Yeah.
I said, that came out of Michael Bublé. But I already knew he could do things. I'll talk with Dave Foster about, how he discovered it. You don't think about it. Just let it be.
Mm,
Some people just do. And that's where the part of the it factor comes in. All of a
mm,
sudden you're singing something. Otis Redding, he didn't really have any music lessons, but he sang in the studio and arms, the hair on the arms of the people in that studio, because they were saying, well, who is this kid, this country kid? And he laid them out. See,
Well,
that's a,
you look at Aretha, you look at Billie Holiday, you look at all of those people from that era. I mean, the life that they went through was horrific. horrific the way they were treated. But the music that came out of them had such root core depth, not just meaning in the words, but you could feel the pain, you could feel the joy, you could feel everything in it. And that's what we want music to do. We want it to move us, we want it to express for us, we want it to uplift us or to calm us or even to speak out for us. And that's why music will never die, because it's a language that is just too needed. And and I
The,
think more and more people that immerse themselves into it and trust the core. And
the
when we say you've
hardest
got to
thing,
trust the core of you.
the hardest thing I think sometimes for us musicians slash entertainers is as youngsters or whenever we get into it to get out of our own way and let the
Hmm.
Spirit come through because we are vessels.
Yeah.
There's very much a thing, I do a lot of teaching.
Hmm.
And I came to a point with my own self when I was like 19 years old or something like that. I so desperately wanted to be a musician that my whole self was fraught with it.
Mm.
So when I was practicing, I was really nervous and my body was all seized up, and I'm trying to force this goal of mine to happen.
Hmm.
And I came to a point where I realized that if you're practicing and you're super uptight and seized up, you're going to play like that when you get on stage.
Yeah.
So I made this commitment that anytime I felt like, my shoulders were coming up and I was starting to get anxious and stuff, that I would stop and cool out for 5 minutes, and I would only play when I could play relaxed.
Mm.
And that's kind of a big step in all this stuff. I mean, Nat King Cole to me is the ultimate expression of a guy who sounds like he's just exhaling. And of
Yes,
course,
I know.
That's
there's
a
so
great way
much
to
more
say
Yes.
to
that.
it than that.
Yeah.
You watch
That's
those
great.
TV shows where he's just playing incredibly burning piano, but he's turned towards the audience and it's so casual.
Uh-huh.
But that's a guy that could just do it so naturally and so relaxed. It's like
Mm.
a goal for all of us.
I yet have so much depth and meaning in it as well.
Yeah.
Right? And not everything has to be angst or deliberate. We really want things to come again through the very core of who we are. In anything you do, whether you're the musician, it doesn't matter what you're doing in life. Ignite life is an inside out job. And musicians know this because you're compelled to come from the inside. You bring the inside out through your music, through your lyrics. That is your expression of your inside out. So many people are living the outside in life, chasing, quote, quote, the dream. Fast cars, how many likes, the extension of this, that, etc. And they're not going inside. But when you watch a musician and you know they're coming from the core of who they are, they're ignited with the universe. It's coming right through them. You can feel the truth in the sound and in the words, and you know that they mean it. They're not just, this is another thing why I like, about the voice or anything. Somebody may sound brilliantly technical, but where's the feeling? Somebody will come out maybe a bit pitchy, but that feeling just grabbed you. We want to be moved as a listener, and when a musician is coming from the inside out, they're certainly going to move as one way or the other.
You'll hear it. And before we go any further, I want to thank you, Miss Sarah, for having us on. I'm going to have to leave you in a minute, but I
No
really
problem.
love that we get to come and hang. And George, you watch yourself, sir.
Well, once Ellis is off, I'm going to give you all the
The
real dirt.
detail.
Good. You better.
The
Yeah,
nitty
Ellis.
gritty.
Uh,
The nitty gritty.
You won't believe it. These are really terrible, salacious stories.
Oasis. Hey, how you spell that?
He'll make a song out of it.
No.
Ellis's checkered past.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Checker.
Well, you just
What
make a
color is
kilt
that?
out of it. So, right. So, yeah. Thank you so much, Ellis, for being here today, definitely. And George is going to relay all the information, the sites and everything where we can listen and
Absolutely.
find everything. But, thank you for being here today and also for being so dedicated to the music for so many years and
Just
keep
in
on
time.
going.
Yes, yes.
that it ain't over until it's over, right? Until you are singing as you jump into the grave, right?
And I want to die living.
Amen.
Exactly.
George,
Amen.
love you, brother.
All right, Ellis, see you in a minute.
All right. God bless you, Sarah.
That's you too. Okay, as Ellis leaves us, okay, no, George, there's a lot of platforms that we can find you both on. You've both got Instagrams. And would you give your Instagram, your
Yeah,
Facebook, and your sites?
the Instagram is Whitty Hall
Stream
Artist Team.
or team.
Yeah. And that's a great place. The single is going to be available on all the streaming platforms by October 18th.
Hmm.
You'll be able to add it to a playlist on Spotify or Pandora. We're hoping to get it on Sirius XM. But the news of its release and where you can find it will be easily accessible on Instagram at Whitty Hall Artist Team, Whitty Hall Artist Team. We also have a growing presence on Facebook. We had some things up on YouTube, but the label asked us to take them down until they're released through the official channels and so forth. But you'd be able to find us there too. We have some really fun videos of a great funk song of Ellis's called Soul Street. And then we redid the Sam and Dave classic, I Thank You. And that will be available on YouTube, but we have to wait till the record comes out for that stuff. And then the website, which is another great source for sort of just keeping up with what's coming out where. When we start playing live shows, you'll be able to get information from there. And I'm just going to double check this super quick, but I think it's whittyhall.com.
Okay, I don't have that
It
one.
is.
I
Yeah,
have
and
your
there's links
individual ones, but
there.
mhm,
There's a little preview of Die Living on there
mhm,
that you can get a feel for it. We're pretty conscious with this record. A big part of both Ellis and I wanted to maintain the tradition of Marvin Gaye and
mm,
Stevie Wonder and Sam Cooke and people who were bringing a message to the music. So there's a
yeah,
number of tunes on here um, that kind of have what we think is an important social component too,
hmm,
but over a good groove in the way that all those guys did it.
right. It's amazing how songs become anthems in people's lives or anthems for a movement, right? Or because it speaks to so many people that it becomes then that, that expression that everybody can relate to. And it's wonderful when you
Right.
have a
And the
song to
first
that.
song that we did for this was a rock anthem from Ukraine, written by a Ukrainian rock star named Slava Varkachuk. And Ellis wrote new words to it. I completely came up with a new musical arrangement for it. And it's kind of a long form, it's 6.5 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
But we also made a beautiful video of that as kind of an expression of our solidarity
Mm-hmm.
with the people of Ukraine in this time of terrible
Yeah.
crisis. It's very anthemic. That's kind
Yes.
of what
Yeah.
brought that tune to mind.
Right. We've all got a song that is kind of that song that we go to, right? That speaks to us at whatever particular time in life. And then there's those ones that are, anthemic in the way that they kind of, everybody relates to them. And then it always says like when people have a book club and then they read speak what they got out of the book. I'm always encouraging people to have a podcast club, listen to the podcast, and then share what each one of you got from it. Because
Hmm.
then you have the whole album, so to speak, right?
Right.
Because you've got a different point of view. But I think, one of the things that we need to have where music is something that can open the door to that is let's communicate. Let's talk about it. It sounds like these songs are the door opener to a deeper conversation. And, that's what we need to have in this world right now. We have
Hmm.
too much reaction, too much knee-jerk and too much hysteria, and we haven't got enough compassion, and we haven't got enough empathy, and we do not communicate from the core of who we are. We're communicating from that reaction, and so
Stevie
anything that can
says
help
it
us.
best.
Yeah.
Love's in need of love today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And love is all. Love is, there's that corny song, "Love makes the world go round." It does. And the more we can ignite the love in people through music, through words that are meaningful, just that blanket, that comfort that music can bring,
Mhm.
the more we're going to be able to heal ourselves, therefore heal each other, which is so important. You're also what I see here on TikTok as well. Uh,
Yes, that's true. We weren't for a while, but we are now. So whatever you tune into to kind of stay in touch with bands you like, I think Die Living is an incredibly infectious tune.
mhm.
And a lot of the stuff on this record is that way. So I think if people hear it, they're going to want to know where they can hear more or
Right.
stay in touch with the band and so forth. But we're kind of on every platform now, I think. We're even on X. Yeah.
There were so many people are coming down from it, but yeah, it's like
Yeah, I came down from it a couple of years ago, but
uh,
we're trying to get the word out.
exactly.
And then we'll have a really nice YouTube presence probably by January.
Excellent. Yes, because that's
Yeah.
a big one. And of course, you've
Mhm.
each got your own site. So ellishall.com and georgewhitty.com. You've got your
Yeah,
own
that's
sites there.
actually gwhitty.com, GWHITTY.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Wrong one here. I
I
will
tried to
change
keep
that.
people from having to type out George because we live in that short attention
I
span
know. I know.
culture.
I'm not. I don't pay attention to short attention spans. I'm all about the depth.
Right.
It's all about go further, go deeper. Because when we do all those answers, we're busy short-term chasing are actually lying there. You've just got to pay attention to it. So
Mhm.
thank you for coming together with Ellis, but also for the years that you've been in music. I know it's like for many people, they're only as good as the next gig, and because it's a hard world to be in, but it's also the heart and soul of it that you have to do it. It's who you are. It would be to deny who you are, which we don't want. We want an example of embracing who you are and the gift that you're given because it's here for a purpose. So thanks for staying with it, being
And thank
adaptable.
you for helping spread the good word. Without people like you, how are people going to find out that, this thing that's been a labor of love for us for a year and a
Mm,
half is even out there?
right.
So, yeah,
Look,
so we really
we've
appreciate
all
you
got a
having us
gift. We've all
on.
got a calling. I stumbled on this one 12 years ago. And yes, it is that library of wisdom, that
Hmm.
we all need to discover along the way. And yeah, their answers are here on a podcast. They're in the music. They're just,
Right.
my motto is listen, learn, and apply. So
Hmm.
whether you are wanting to be a professional musician or not, but singing releases your soul. It lifts up your heart, gets you moving, soothes you. For God's sake, play an instrument or sing. Who cares who's listening?
Hmm.
Do it for yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here. And to everyone out there, please go and get the album. The words are absolutely fantastic and really needed right now. And it is again, share, share, share. Talk to people about it. Have a conversation. What do these words mean to you? I mean, have the music integrated where other people can listen to it in the carpool, whatever. There's a lot of things that we can do. So listen, learn, and apply because we're the solution that we're seeking. Until next time, folks, bye for now.
Brother, show me the way you came to be. 'Cause I'm sure you got a lot to say that just might shine a light for me. I've been watching.
We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tag at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.